Good morning. Welcome to this taxi licensing and rights of way committee meeting. My name is County Councillor Carl Lewis and I have the pleasure of chairing this meeting. We have a bit of echo. Okay, on to the first item on the agenda, which is apologies and the roll call. I'll hand over now to Carol, our clerk, to go through that, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Carl Lewis.
Present.
Councillor Gareth D. Jones.
Present.
Councillor Tom Colbert.
Present.
Councillor Angela Davis. Councillor Deb Edwards.
Here.
Councillor Les George has given apologies. Councillor Hylwyn Hume.
Present.
Councillor Peter James.
Present.
Councillor Adrian Jones.
Present.
Councillor Gareth E. Jones.
Present.
Councillor Karina Kenyon Wade.
Present.
Councillor Ian McIntosh.
Present.
Councillor Jeff Morgan.
Present.
Councillor Gareth Pugh has given apologies. Councillor Edwin Roderick. No. Councillor Gwynfor Thomas.
Present.
Councillor Elwyn Vaughan. Councillor Hugh Williams. No. And Councillor Jonathan Wilkinson has given apologies. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Carol. By way of introduction, I'm going to go around the room now and introduce officers to yourselves, to the new members. If officers could give a brief description of your roles within Powys County Council. So we'll start with Carol Johnson to my right.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Carol Johnson, Democratic Services Officer. So I clerk this committee and a range of other committees within the council.
Thank you, Carol. I'll go online now to Colin Edwards, please.
Thank you, Chair. Colin Edwards. I'm the Principal Solicitor Shire with principal responsibility for advising on planning and licensing matters.
Thank you, Colin. Over to Peter Morris.
Good morning, members. Good morning, committee. I'm Peter Morris. I'm professional lead for planning. So I look after the planning services for the authority. So I help support this committee. In terms of planning, we've got obviously the development management function, planning applications, planning enforcement, but I also look after the team that's responsible for preparing the local development plan, and we're heading towards a replacement local development plan. Okay, so that's what I do. Okay.
Good morning, members. My name's Gemma Bufton. I'm a Principal Planning Officer on the Development Management team.
Good morning, members. My name's Kate Bowen and I'm a Senior Planning Officer in the Development Management team.
Good morning, members. I'm Luke Wisdom and I'm a planner within the Development Management team. Thank you.
Good morning all, Luke Jones and I am a Principal Planning Officer within the Development Management team.
We have a Highways Officer.
I've got a couple of guests.
Oh, in the back, yeah.
There, a couple of other team members. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
Yes.
Yeah.
So my name's Rhian Griffiths. I'm one of the planners on the Development Management team.
Morning, members. I'm Gwyn Humphreys, a Senior Planning Officer.
Simon Crew, Highways Development Control. So I deal with Montgomeryshire for plan responses.
Thank you very much. On to item number 2 on the agenda, which is minutes from the previous meeting. We don't have, unfortunately, enough members to pass the first set of minutes, which were held on Thursday, the 28th of April. So we'll move on to, we'll defer that if everyone's happy. If I don't hear any different, I'll move on. Great. Okay. On to the second set of minutes, which are the minutes from Monday, the 30th of May. We've all received a copy. Do I have a proposer and seconder to accept those minutes, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Elwyn Vaughan. Do I have a seconder? Thank you very much, Councillor Ian McIntosh. Those have been accepted. On to declarations of interest. A, to receive any declarations of interest from members relating to items to be considered on the agenda.
Can I just make a declaration of interest
on application 21/1511/4. The reason for the declaration of interest is that the applicants are acquaintances myself, and we've been in a contract. They undertook some work for myself 12 months ago, so I will be removing myself from the meeting at that point.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Did you actually raise your hand then, just as a test?
No.
Oh, you didn't. That's
No.
okay. I just worried the system wasn't working.
No, the system's working. I just haven't got it in the right place on my,
No problem,
on my
no
screen
problem.
at the moment.
Okay, B, to receive members' requests that a record be made of their membership of town community councils where discussion has taken place of matters for consideration of this committee. No. C, to receive declarations from members of the committee that they'll be acting as a local representative in respect to an individual application being considered by the committee. D, to note details of members of the county council who are not members of the committee who will be acting as a local representative in respect to an individual application being considered by the committee. I believe Councillor Lucy Roberts. Yes, thank you. On to the planning proper. 4.1 updates. Members, you've received the updates via email and a paper copy today. Has everyone had a chance to read through that update? If there is someone here who hasn't had that time, they think they haven't had that allotted time, please raise your hand. Great, we may proceed. Sorry. You haven't read the update. We'll pause the meeting for you to read it because it's important that you read it. Sorry, do apologize, members. I'll repeat that again. That's application 21/0186/FUL, change of use to minor extension to previously approved nursing home to form 15 one-bedroom apartments, 2 two-bedroom apartments and 3 studio apartments with associated parking for 27 vehicles together with amenity space. Taking us through this application is Gemma Bufton. I believe, Gemma, we have a bit of information for the committee.
Yes, good morning, members. Unfortunately, it's about 15 minutes before the meeting started, I have received an email which is challenging perhaps some of the land ownership and whether appropriate notices have been served for the property. On that basis, given that without those notices being served, we would be unable, I suppose, to determine the application. I am asking that it is deferred today and it will come back before you once we've ensured all of that has been ironed out and appropriate notices served. So I am asking members or putting towards you that the application is deferred from today's meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Elwyn Vaughan, please.
I just on that basis that I move that we accept the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Elwyn Vaughan. Do we have a seconder for that or? Thank you very much, Vice Chair. So we have a proposal and a seconder to go along with the officer's recommendation, which is one of deferral on the first application. All those, rather than voting online, members, we're going to have a raise of hands. So all those members wishing to go along with that, please raise your hand. Okay. And Councillor Hugh, you are online. Are you happy to give a verbal? Councillor Hugh Williams.
Sorry, Chair, I can now unmute. Yes, I do.
Thank you. Could everyone put their hands up again, please, that wanted to go along with the officer's recommendation? That's carried. Thank you very much, members. On to the second application.
receive on local resident to Unity House? Will you receive notification of this meeting?
Pardon, I didn't.
We've got objections in this objection on the local community, and we didn't receive any notification of this meeting.
If you put written comments in, you would have received acknowledgement at the time of submitting those comments. On that, it does give notification of how, if you want to speak, it gives information there. But if you want to contact me after this meeting, I'd happily talk you through that process.
Okay.
Thank you.
So surely the policy is to inform anyone of an objection to notify us.
Not, yeah.
No, as Gemma's just said, you have an acknowledgement letter that sets out the process. So you've been given notice already. Obviously, you've heard about it, which is good. I would suggest you make contact with Gemma, and then we can make sure you do know when it does return to committee. Yeah. So apologies if it seems a bit difficult, but that's the procedure. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, notification is good to know going ahead. We've got work to do.
Yeah.
And it's quite turn up. Rearranging my whole diary. Lots of everyone else couldn't attend.
Okay.
And certainly we want to.
Okay, appreciate that, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the second application, which is 20/2130/FUL, installation and earthworks, bank slurry lagoon and associated works at Newbridge Farm, Myford. Taking us through this application is Kate, and I believe we have.
I'll come in, Chair, quickly.
Okay,
we were due to have speakers today, so this is another recommendation to committee. The agent has taken a turn for the worse. He's not well. He's been unable to find a substitute to attend today. So I think our recommendation to you as officers that we defer this one to. I hasten to say it's the only other one that we're recommending that to, just in light of the fact that unfortunately the agent is unable to attend and hasn't managed to find a substitute. Kate, have I missed anything else from that? No. So I'd be recommending that we defer this one to.
Okay, members. First to indicate they'd like to speak on this is Councillor Elwyn Vaughan, please.
Again, Chair, I note the recommendation and suggest that we approve the suggestion made.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hugh Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would second that proposal. It makes sense. It's very unusual to have two applications in a row. Very unusual indeed, but I think we should accept the recommendation.
I agree. Okay, members, it has been proposed and duly seconded to go along with the officer's recommendation for one a deferral. Councillor Hugh, I'll go to you first. Are you happy? What is your proposal for the?
I would accept the recommendation of the officer to defer the current application.
Thank you.
Due to the illness of the agent.
Thank you very much. Members, if you're wishing to go along with officer's recommendation, please indicate now. Those against? Abstentions? That meets with officer's recommendation. Thank you. On to the third application, which is application 22/0422/FUL residential development of 32 units associated works at Robert Owen House, Park Lane, Newtown. Taking us through this application is Kate Bowen. Over to you, Kate.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just switch my presentation on, I believe. Apologies. So this is a residential development of 32 units and associated works. Share screen. On the Zoom page, it should say share. Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So just to start again, so apologies for that. This is a residential development of 32 units and associated works at the former Robert Owen House, Park Lane, Newtown. we go. Apologies again. Right, so the site is located within the development boundary of Newtown, as indicated by the yellow arrow on the presentation. Trehavern playing fields are located to the north. The River Severn is located to the north as well. Trehavern housing site or residential site is located to the southwest. The existing building, Robert Owen House, has already been demolished, apparently in April 2021. The site slopes from the existing dwellings at Trehavern down towards the playing fields. This is the location plan for the site. The principle is supported because it would provide much needed smaller residential units within Newtown, which is obviously a sustainable location. This is the layout of the proposed residential development. It would be 2 linear blocks of flats, ground floor flats and first floor flats. There'll be a cycle store, a bin store, obviously an internal roadway would separate the buildings. It would be a high density owing to the character of the development. However, that's not out of character for Newtown. These are the elevation drawings, just to give you an idea of what the flats would look like. There would be a palette of mixed bricks under slated roofs. Here's the flat 2 type flat full elevations. This is a cross section showing obviously that the proposed buildings would be set at a lower level than the dwellings at Trehavern, and obviously the 25-degree rule in terms of amenity would not be impinged upon. So just some slides showing the layout of the proposed flats. This slide shows gives you an idea of what's landscaping proposed. There would be a loss of 1 ornamental tree and a group of low quality trees which are existing at the site. Obviously that would have some impact. However, the compensatory planting is proposed, which is considered acceptable and would enhance the site from its current appearance. So moving on to the site, this is taken from the access point with the river beyond the wooden fence and Trehavern playing fields. This again is at the access point with the existing properties at Llindynnes and Trehavern on the left-hand side. This is taken from the pathway down to Trehavern Fields. And this is taken from Trehavern Fields itself, where you can see that the land levels sloping down towards the fields quite clearly on that picture. And that is taken again from the other side of Trehavern, just to show you again the land level sloping down to the site. So obviously the proposed development is considered to make an efficient use of land in terms of its density, and it is located on previously developed land and within the development boundary of Newtown. The development will provide a housing type which is needed, and affordable housing can be secured as part of the development. The design is considered appropriate to its context, and all material planning issues have been addressed or can be addressed via the use of conditions. Therefore, the recommendation is one of approval as set out within the report. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much, Kate. I'll just move my... over to you, members, for discussion. First to indicate they'd like to speak is Councillor Elwyn Vaughan, please.
Well, just to say, this is a brownfield site, so it is a good use of such a site rather than using green spaces. It is the housing demand is there, that's clearly on the housing register, and it's also convenient to all public services in Newtown and surrounding. So therefore, I am happy to move that we accept the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Elwyn Vaughan. Councillor Gareth Jones, Vice Chair, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I draw attention to page 139 about the outdoor leisure and recreation? I'm sure it'll be no surprise I bring this up. Where is the nearest play facility to this development? I think the previous committee were very strong on their will to make sure that there was adequate facilities in close proximity to any developments throughout Powys. And I think this should also be looked at here, please. So I'd be grateful for an update.
Yeah, thank you, councillor. Yeah, so the nearest equipped play space would be the newly refurbished site at Avon House, Newtown, which is right next to where the new kind of hub building right next to the river in Newtown is being proposed. So it's within the 600 metres accessibility buffer zone, hence why we've decided that there's no on-site provision required. So it is within the 600 metre buffer zone of that. And just checking whether I put the actual distance. Can't see that I've included the specific distance within the report. Basically, you would walk along basically the footway from Trehavron through kind of past PTLRW Park, and you are at that play area. Obviously, there's also quite a bit of amenity space in terms of Trehavron playing field and outdoor sports pitch within the facility. So we are of the opinion that it is adequately provided for in this instance. But point taken, obviously, we should be seeking to enhance facilities, get new facilities, etc., where possible.
Thank you very much. Any other members that want to come in on this application? Just checking. Councillor Hugh Williams, please.
Chair, can the officer expand on the affordable housing element? There is a suggestion, it's 100%. I mean, this seems a good application, but there is a condition there which suggests, well, it is suggested that a condition needs to be put in that they are affordable housing in perpetuity. Is that correct?
Thank you, councillor. Yes, so it is actually proposed as a 100% affordable housing scheme. Obviously, it's been put forward by our own housing department. However, our LDP policy H5 only allows us within town centre areas to require a contribution of 20% in the Severn Valley. So Newtown is in the Severn Valley, obviously. So the required contribution is 20%. So that is all we can condition. So that is why the condition is recommending a 20% contribution towards affordable housing, and that would come in as a scheme at a later date for us to agree to ensure that the affordable housing is retained in perpetuity, etc.
Okay, Councillor Howland-Hume, please.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Elwyn alluded to, this is very much needed housing accommodation. It is very much needed in Newtown, and is going to meet a desperate need in Newtown as well. So I would like to second Councillor Elwyn's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howland. Councillor Ian McIntosh, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to double check, really. I was Cabinet Member for Housing when this project was going through. Am I still okay to be part of this decision, or do I need to leave this bit?
I'll bring in Colin. Colin, could you clarify whether or not Councillor Ian McIntosh is okay to be a decision maker on this application, please?
Yes, just a little bit more information there. Would you have been involved in actually making the decision to put this forward for development as a housing site, or did it just come under your portfolio?
It's come under my portfolio, really.
Yeah. I think you'd be all right then. If you weren't actively involved in the nitty-gritty decision making regarding this site.
Yeah. Okay.
If it was just under your auspices, I think you'll be all right.
Okay, thanks, Colin.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Councillor Ian McIntosh. Are there any other speakers? I believe not. It has been proposed. Sorry, couldn't see you on it. Sorry, Angela.
Yes, I just wanted to check. The applicant is on behalf of Powys County Council, but you've discussed affordable housing. So does that imply that Powys County Council want to build these with a view to selling them at some point, or would they be for council housing as in rental property?
I don't actually know what the housing authority's plans are with them. I think when it comes to the planning side, because it's with, as Kate has explained, what our policies do in the local development plan is they seek contributions of affordable housing. We always have to be mindful when we're seeking those contributions how much we can secure or seek, because we don't want to make things unviable. So behind all of this, when we were preparing the local development plan and its policies, there were viability testing, and that's how we arrived at the 20%. So what we're seeking is 20% of the houses to be affordable. Now, in reality, the housing authority, by the sounds of it, is looking to deliver all of them as affordable, 100%. Now, in terms of how it does that, I don't know if we know, Kate, whether you know, I suspect they will become, I don't know for sure, but they could well become part of the council housing stock. So they would be eligible for people on our waiting list to occupy. From a planning perspective, that's not important. What we're trying to do is make sure that they do deliver the minimum requirement, which is 20%. Now, to get to that, there's a planning condition in the report, and what they have to do, that requires what's known as an affordable housing scheme. So we expect that to come back to us as a further application. It's not likely to come back to this committee because the principle would be agreed here. I'd imagine it would be a delegated scheme, but that would set out exactly how they intend to manage that 20%. Okay, and it could well be, as I say, it could be, well, that's the ideal for me, that they go into the council housing stock and then they're available as socially rented accommodation for everybody. Okay. They could propose something different. I think it's really with them, but being a housing authority led scheme, that's what I suspect will happen. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers before I put it to the vote? No. Okay. It has been proposed and duly seconded to go along with the officer's recommendation, which is one of conditional consent. Those members wishing to go along with that, please raise your hand now. Those against? Abstentions? And then Hugh's vote online. You've got his voting slip, have you, Carol?
No, Chair, I am for the application. I don't have a slip or anything, but I am for the application.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Hugh. Councillor Hugh, did you manage to have a voting slip in the chat as usual?
I've not had it as yet, not as far as I'm aware.
Okay, okay, that's fine. Okay. That meets with officer's recommendation. Thank you, members. On to the next application, which is 22/0384/REM. Removal of variation of conditions, section 73 application to vary conditions number 4 and 5 attached outline planning approval M96359 to allow occupancy of restricted rewording. Kevin Cork or Highview, Roncan, Kevin Cork Welshpool. Taking us through this application is Kate. Over to you, Kate, again, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just have to flick through the slides. Yeah, so thank you, Chair. As the Chair has outlined, this is an application to vary the occupancy conditions attached to a previous permission, M1996-0539, which restrict the occupancy of the two dwellings, Hillview and Fron Green at Kevin Cork, from the traditional historic agricultural occupancy conditions to the more modern and advocated rural enterprise dwelling conditions. The yellow arrow shows the location of Hillview and Fron Green. It's located in the open, well, the properties are both located in the open countryside, approximately 480 metres east of Llanlligan. This slide just shows the exact location of Hillview, and you may be able to detect the location of Fron Green, which is sort of in amongst within the land-edged blue, just in amongst the range of agricultural buildings. This is a slide showing the property known as Hillview. So this is the property that was constructed under the Planning Permission 1996-0539. It's obviously a 3-bedroom detached brick bungalow. And this slide shows the existing farmhouse, I gather, called Fron Green, which is also subject to an occupancy condition, and that was put in place at the time of the 1996 consent to ensure that there was still a stock of dwellings available for agricultural workers in the locality and to reduce the pressure for new houses in the open countryside. So the proposed rewording of the conditions to the new and more modern rural enterprise dwelling conditions is in accordance with the guidance set out within Technical Advice 6 and the associated practice guidance to enable dwellings to be occupied by persons employed in agriculture in the locality, as well as other qualifying rural enterprises. And if no compliant persons are found, it does extend to those people in need of affordable housing as well. Therefore, on the basis that it is in line with planning policy, the recommendation is one of approval as set out within the report.
Thank you very much, Kate. Over to members for discussion. Councillor Elwyn Vaughan, please.
Well, I'll start things off then. The report is fairly clear. Traditionally, I would have been against such changes, but I think we have to reflect and accept the fact that farming has changed tremendously in the last 20, 30 years and is continuing to do so. And I think the type of classification as rural enterprise dwelling is actually much more appropriate to the reality of life in many of our rural communities, where people not just farm, but they are contracting in forestry, in working in other farms and all sorts of other enterprises. And it does incorporate all of that. And it is in keeping clearly with the planning policy on the national level. And therefore, to be honest with you, I think we have little choice but in accepting the recommendation, and I move as such.
Yeah. Councillor Elwyn Vaughan. Councillor Hywyn Hume, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the concern I have here is that this has been on the market quite some time, and at the bottom of page 1, the Community Council are challenging. The council would welcome an investigation by the Planning Department into the current valuation and recent for sale and offer details on the property. This is now, I believe, with it has been on with a local agent. It's now on with a London agent, which does concern me as to the valuation of the property. And I'm just wondering, can the officer provide any more information on offer details? Have you been able to find out any information with regards to the sale history on this property?
Thank you, Councillor. I did query with the agent. Unfortunately, I didn't have a response in terms of the marketing history, but as I've set out in the report, not that it's irrelevant at this time, but the marketing position at this moment in time is not a consideration to change the condition to the rural enterprise occupancy condition, because it is in line with policy. And obviously, we would be looking, if in the future an application came in to remove the rural enterprise dwelling occupancy condition, we would be looking very carefully at the marketing efforts at that time to ensure that the valuation and the marketing price, etc., was appropriate. And that's marketing for sale and for rent. That is what the guidance is within the policy. So obviously, traditionally, agricultural occupancy dwellings have been marketed at around 70% of open market value. So obviously we would be expecting evidence to demonstrate that. And as part of the submission to remove the conditions, you know, I would be expecting details of, you know, sales particulars, details of offers, whether a for sale sign was at the property, because I did note during my visit there is no for sale board that I could see. So we would be expecting a whole suite of evidence to come in if the application was submitted to remove the conditional conditions. So that is a further test at a later date. However, your concerns are noted at this point. As I say, I didn't have any further information from the agent, and I also couldn't find any information online. So yeah, apologies, I'm not aware of what the current marketing price or position is at this moment in time.
Thank you, Councillor Howland Hume. Just moving back. I'm led by you guys and you members in this committee. I need direction. Councillor Gareth D. Jones, Vice Chair, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, totally agree with what Councillor Elwyn Vaughan said at the beginning. It's the situation we find ourselves in. I hope moving forward we look at this in detail when other applications come forward, because it is a concern, as Councillor Howland Hume pointed out, that some of these restrictions, not just agricultural workers, others are taken off with and not serving the purpose they were originally intended. But I'm more than happy to second the proposal of Councillor Elwyn Vaughan to go with officer recommendation. Yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Gareth D. Jones, Vice Chair.
Yeah, just worth saying, because obviously some of these things are probably new to some of the members here. They haven't dealt with as they're new to the committee, but clearly in terms of sort of the policy approach here, agricultural dwellings, workers' dwellings in the past, and even rural enterprise dwellings today, they're very much an exception. Because they're in the open countryside, we obviously look to direct development wherever possible to our settlements. So because they're that exception, they have to have that justification behind them. The justification really comes from Welsh Government. So we followed Welsh Government's advice as a technical advice note that sits alongside Planning Policy Wales, technical advice note 6. So really what Kate's described to you here is the process that's set within TAN 6, where somebody wishes to widen the scope of an older agricultural workers dwelling, forestry workers dwelling. The TAN strongly advises that you widen it initially into that rural enterprise dwelling first. So that's what Kate is recommending to you. Now, as they are exceptional, I think to try and remove those conditions in the future, you've got to put a very strong justification forward. And that's where the testing of marketing comes forward. So if that was to happen in the future, we're going to scrutinise that heavily. We don't let those things go easily. Okay. So I just wanted to, it sort of sets the scene for you as members, how it works. Okay.
Thank you for that, Peter. It's a good bit of advice and information. Members, I haven't got anyone else wishing to speak, so I'll put it to the vote. It has been proposed and duly seconded to go along with officer's recommendation, which is one of approval. Those members wishing to go along with that, please indicate now. Those against? Abstentions? Councillor Hugh Williams, please. Could you give me your verbal vote if you're happy to give a verbal vote?
I'm for, Chair.
Thank you very much. That meets with officer's recommendation. Thank you. On to our next application, which is 21/1511/FUL, erection of new 4-bedroom dwelling and associated works. Taking us through this application is Luke Jones, please.
Thank you, Chair. Application 21.
Could I just pause a minute? Sorry. Could I just check if Councillor William Lloyd is present online? 'Cause I believe-
Yes, I am present.
Excellent.
Chair.
Will be one of the first speakers shortly. Okay, thank you. Please
Thank you, Chair.
continue.
Application 211511 FUL is for the erection of a 4-bedroom open market dwelling and associated works at the Old Orchard, Llanhigan. Here is an aerial view of the site, which is located within the open countryside as defined by the Powys LDP. The application site is located within the Community Council area of Llanhigan. The application site is currently used as an orchard and for grazing. Here is a zoomed in aerial view of the site. To the north of the site is a existing agricultural building. To the south is an existing orchard and the county highway C0075. To the east of the site is agricultural land, and to the west is further agricultural land and the access to the site. I would now like to hand over to the chair for the speakers in relation to this application.
Thank you, Luke. First of our speakers is Councillor William Lloyd, who joins us on Zoom. Councillor William Lloyd, you have 5 minutes and you may begin when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you to the officers and the members. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to the previous member of the Gwynedd ward for calling this into the planning committee. I'd also like to thank a neighbouring member and also the local MP for supporting this application. It is evident that this application has ongoing local support from within the community and the locality. I am also in favour of this application, and there have been no objections from the residents and the community council. And reading the officer's diligent reports, the majority of the consultees do not object either. Therefore, the outcome of this application is based on the development area. I'd just like to point out that I live in the heart of Llanhigan itself. The application is situated within 400 metres of 6 other dwellings on the Hay Road, and several of which are further away from the main village itself. In the Progressive Partnership for Powys, we talk about the housing emergency, developing prosperous towns and villages, and securing the best start in life for young people. So I think it's time to take into account these applications to make this happen. And that's everything that I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor William Lloyd. Next speaker is Mr. Ollie Medcalf, the applicant. If you feel comfortable over here, Mr. Medcalf, then please do so.
Drawing of the £7 FO1.
Chair, could I intervene? I have a great difficulty in hearing that. Whether it's to do with the microphone, I'm not sure.
Yeah, sorry about that, Councillor Hugh.
Could I ask the officer to bring up the drawing of the settlement pattern F01, please? In terms of for Hay on Wye, do you mean? It's in part of our application pack. We've got drawings there, and it shows the settlement pattern of the location of the site. I haven't included that slide. I've got this slide here, which shows the distances between your application site and the settlement of Hay on Wye and Llanhigan. Okay. All I'd like to say is obviously that's a aerial image taken from, and it's obviously not obviously up to date. Doesn't show the existing yard there and some of the other infrastructure that's been put in place across that ribbon of development recently. Obviously part of our application pack there was which had some diagrams and stuff, but if we haven't got it, that's fine.
You have 5 minutes, Mr. Metcalfe, and you may begin when you're ready.
I'd like to thank the officer for a balanced report. We're pleased that officers like the design and acknowledge it will integrate well into the landscape. It must be unusual for the committee to review a proposal before you with no objections. My name is Ollie Metcalfe. I'm a director of OTM Grounds Care Limited. I moved to the parish of Llanhigan with my family in 2004 from North Yorkshire. I've had a strong relationship with agriculture and rural life all my life, and have been part of the YFC movement since the age of 10, benefiting hugely from all that it has to offer, not least finding my fantastic wife, Leanne. Leanne has been a Paris resident all her life. She's an optometrist and also works in the management team within OTM. We have recently started a family with the arrival of Willem in March. I would like to focus on the statement of the 2 reasons for recommendation of refusal: principle of development and land quality. Land quality: this is a small parcel of land with small agricultural benefits and is already developed. The officer's report suggests we should have explored opportunities to develop land of poorer quality. The proposed site has been carefully considered and well thought out to minimise any impact and to maximise its intended purpose. The LPA have already agreed that this land is of lower grade quality and is an appropriate site for development, giving the neighbouring approval for an agricultural yard and machinery store. The report identifies the land as category 2. However, we would disagree, as Data Map Wales online mapping categorises a proportion of the site as 3B. There is clearly discrepancies, and this method of categorisation is unclear and unsuitable. The project and county ecologists define the land of poor quality, to be of poor quality. Principle of development: the officer report refers to the fact that this site does not reside within the development boundary. Given the site is within Llanhigan, classed as a small village within the LDP, a defined boundary does not exist. There are 6 other properties within 400 metres, making the location particularly unique and should be considered as an extension of the neighbouring settlement of Llanhigan, which has no defined boundary. The site is not open countryside, as reflected by neighbouring recent development and planning decisions. The LPA have granted a series of local approvals within a ribbon of development as identified by drawing number F01. Approvals include the extension of Clive Price haulage, a significant commercial development for Katie Price Racing, with a significant permanent tourist development at Outdoors at Hay, Ashbrook touring caravan site, and car parking for Hay Festival, which now includes permanent fixtures. As a result, the land between Llanhigan and Hay on this side of the county highway is no longer agricultural. It is a mix of residential and commercial. The officer refers to planning policy. However, this has been superseded by emerging national policy. Officer suggests Planning Policy Wales does not support this application. We strongly disagree. Planning Policy Wales, with regard to development in the countryside, states in support of this application at 3.60. Development in the countryside should be located within and adjoining those settlements where it can best be accommodated in terms of infrastructure, access, habitat, lands and landscape conservation. Infilling or minor extension to existing settlements may be acceptable. This site is a simple, legal and appropriate continuation of recently facilitated development via the planning system. PTLRW protects land defined as green belt or green wedges. Given the continuous neighbouring ribbon of development between Llanhigan and Hay, this land is clearly not green belt or green wedge, and therefore PPW affords the LPA the opportunity to apply tests to determine applications such as this cause harm. Clearly, there is no harm caused by this application. It adds to local and landscape character on land surrounded by development and can be supported towards approval. What this means to OTM and job retention, there is a genuine need for us to be located on site due to the way OTM has grown dramatically over recent years, now employing 35 full-time members of staff. This has created issues with a huge commitment to being on site, opening and closing machinery, equipment store, organising teams and equipment with multi-channels of work that include out-of-hours service. Not being located on site is unsustainable. We have invested heavily in professional specialist equipment. This creates its own challenges, with rural theft being a major factor. We have now started a family with the arrival of Gwyl, and want to raise our family living in the community that we grew up in and are very much so part of. Our current living arrangements will soon be unsuitable for our growing family. We have received no negative feedback or comments throughout the planning process and have tried to ensure the proposal is well thought out and of sympathetic design to complement the local surroundings. The LPA may be concerned about setting a precedent by approving this application. However, the location of this application is unique and all applications should be determined on their individual merits. The merits of this application mean it should be approved. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ali Metcalf. That concludes our speakers on this particular application. I'll hand back now to Luke to take us to his recommendation. Over to you, Luke.
Thank you, Chair. I just need to get my slides a bit bigger.
Is there any way that can be made bigger on the screen as well?
Wynne, if you're listening, could you come into the chamber for a second, please? We'll just pause the meeting for 5 minutes. Okay. Over to you, Luke, again to continue on, please.
Thank you, Chair. Here is a slide showing the location of the application site. The application site is located 355 metres outside the settlement boundary of Hay on Wye, and therefore does not form part of the settlement of Hay on Wye. The application site is located approximately 980 metres from the main hub of built development within the small village of Llanhigan. Given the distance between the application site is not considered to form part of the small village of Llanhigan, given the site is divorced from the main hub and cluster of dwellings. The application site is therefore considered open countryside as defined by the Powys LDP. Here is a slide demonstrating the settlement boundary for Hay on Wye outlined in black. The proposed development does not relate to any national policy for housing in the open countryside, does not involve the conversion of a rural building, and does not relate to the renovation of an abandoned dwelling. The proposal does not meet any of the criteria for development in the open countryside. The proposal for residential at this location would result in unjustified development in the open countryside. The proposal is therefore contrary to Planning Policy Wales TAN 6 and policies SP6 H1 of the Powys LDP, and the principle of development is unacceptable. Here is the application site outlined in red, with the land in the applicant's ownership outlined in blue. To the north of the site is an agricultural building within the applicant's ownership. The applicants run a well-established ground maintenance and gardening business from the site. Here is the proposed and front and rear elevations of the dwelling. The proposal is for a 4-bedroom open market 2-storey barn-style dwelling, which reflects a traditional agricultural appearance. The proposed dwelling will measure 20.5 metres in length by 7.2 metres in width, with a height to eaves of 5.2 metres and a height to ridge of 8.3 metres. The dwelling will be finished with stone and timber boarding for the walls, aluminium windows under a slate tiled roof. Sorry. Here are the proposed site elevations. It is acknowledged that the proposal is of a large size and scale. However, the dwelling reflects a traditional barn structure and is set back from the county highway. The design and materials proposed are in keeping with the character and appearance of the area. The choice of materials respond well with the context of the surroundings. It is also noted there are a number of large dwellings along this section of the county highway. Here is a ground floor plan of the proposed dwelling. The proposal also incorporates 2 parking spaces within the ground floor layout. Here is a proposed first floor layout, which includes 4 bedrooms. Here is a visual of how the dwelling would appear in the landscape. Consideration has been given to land map in terms of visual, sensory, and historic landscape. The proposed dwelling development is not considered to have a detrimental impact on the landscape, given its siting in close proximity to an existing agricultural building, and the proposal also includes new tree planting to help screen the dwelling. The application site is well screened on all boundaries and is set back from the county highway. Here is a block plan which demonstrates landscaping and drainage for the development. As part of the proposal, the existing trees on site are to be retained, with a small number translocated which impact on the application site. The proposal also includes further tree planting to the front of the dwelling. The PCC ecologist has been consulted on the development and raised no objection, subject to the inclusion of a number of conditions. The application site is defined as category 2, which is defined as good agricultural land in terms of agricultural land classification. Planning Policy Wales 11 states land on grades 1, 2, and 3A should only be developed if there is an overriding need for the development and previously developed or land in lower agricultural grades is unavailable. It is considered the proposed development would result in the loss of grade 2 agricultural land without an overriding need or without sufficient evidence of alternative lower grade sites being explored. The proposed development is therefore contrary to Planning Policy Wales 11. Here is a photo of the existing access to the site. The private access to the application site was previously upgraded under a previous planning consent. Powys County Council Highways has been consulted on the development and raised no objection. Here is a photo looking towards the application site from the private access. In terms of neighbouring amenities, the proposal will not have a detrimental impact on any neighbouring properties given the distance between. Powys County Council Environmental Protection has been consulted and raised no objection to the proposal, subject to conditions on construction times and a tie between the proposed dwelling and the existing agricultural building to prevent any future noise issues. Here is a view looking towards the site. Here is a view looking west towards the existing access and further agricultural land. Here is a view looking north towards the agricultural building, which is within the applicant's ownership. It's also noted that a gas pipeline runs through the application site. Cadent Gas has confirmed that they own and operate the infrastructure in that area. Cadent Gas, Health and Safety Executive, and other gas operators have been consulted and raised no objection to the development, subject to the inclusion of an informative note. Here is a view looking south towards the county highway. And here is a photo looking towards where access will be gained off the private access to the site. The proposed development is located within the catchment area of the River Wye SAC. The Powys County Council Colleges has undertaken a HRA screening, which concludes the proposal will not likely result in a significant effect on the designated features of the River Wye SAC in terms of phosphate. NRW has also been consulted and noted private superman treatment system meets the screening criteria and are satisfied the proposal is not likely to have a significant effect on the SAC. Recommendation. The application does not form part of any settlement and will result in the creation of unjustified development in the open countryside. The proposal would also result in the loss of grade 2 agricultural land, which is considered good quality without any overriding need for the development. The recommendation is therefore one of refusal, as set out within the officer's delegated report.
Thank you very much, Luke. Over to members for discussion, please. First to indicate they'd like to speak on this application is Councillor Ian McIntosh, please.
Thank you, Chair. Not very often I go against, Thank you, Chair. It's not very often I go against officers' recommendations, but at the moment we find ourselves at a time when there's so few applications able to go ahead at the moment because of the phosphates issue. And now we've got an application in front of us that is deemed as not particularly bad for the phosphates issues in relation to the River Wye. And apart from the sort of site location, there's no other good reasons to go against this really. So at the moment, I mean, that's the rest of the debate, but at the moment I'm mindful to sort of propose that we actually go against officers' recommendations. So on that basis, I'm happy to move along those lines.
Okay. You would have to put a sound argument forward for that, Councillor. So if you could explain the wording of that.
Well, the need for further development in the county at the moment, when we're at a time when there's so few opportunities to develop. Does that sound enough reason?
I'll pick up with Colin. Would that stack up, Colin?
Chair, in my view, the fact that it is in the open countryside overrides.
You're very quiet.
I have unmuted. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but you're very faint.
I'm sorry about that. Not sure what to do about that. I shall speak up. So in my view, the fact that the development site is in the open countryside overrides any consideration of need or personal circumstances. Remember from your training the other day, personal circumstances can only rarely be a material planning consideration.
Would you like to come back on that, Councillor?
Let's see how the debate goes, see what everybody else has to think about it, and
I won't take your proposal just yet then.
Right, okay.
Okay, Councillor Owen Vaughan, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Thank you. Yeah, it is an interesting one, to say the least. There are obvious question marks over the land classification being raised today, so that's one thing to flag up. I note the all Wales policy, and I understand the logic of not having development willy-nilly anywhere. But I also note the phrase you made, if I remember rightly, officer, there are many similar large dwellings on this county highway, if I may quote you, which I would say is an interesting, and I would claim to know that road, but to me that would suggest that this development would be in keeping with other similar properties, therefore, on that highway, and would be an argument for, in my case, for allowing such a development if that is in keeping. The other thing I think is also touches back to the previous application we had in Cefn Coch with the change of status from agriculture to a rural enterprise house. And I made the point there, and I'll make the point again. The nature of our communities has changed, is changing. I hope the new LDP reflects this, where rural enterprises, more than perhaps the traditional land use, are becoming more and more important. Now, I get the impression this is a valuable rural enterprise business. It is located on the next field with buildings there already. And to me, there is a logic for having, therefore, this house located as close as possible to the base of that rural enterprise, which is, as we've been told, employing about 35 members of staff, which in any rural community would be greatly welcomed. So like the previous speaker, I would be minded to move or support such a move to approve this on that basis.
I will go to Colin for advice.
Yeah, could I just come in
Okay,
here, please,
yeah,
Chair?
yes, sure.
I think it's worth just clarifying that this application has been submitted as an open market dwelling. It has not been submitted as a rural enterprise dwelling, so consideration has not been given to that in terms of it being as part of that rural enterprise, which is from the site. I would have concerns whether their business would comply in terms of being an acceptable rural enterprise. So yes, it's worth noting that this has just been an application submitted as an open market dwelling.
Yeah, bring Peter in as well. No, you can, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Luke. I think take you back to the training again in the plan-led system that Colin's reminded us all about. And it does sort of relate back to the previous application as well around these applications that are in the open countryside. It's away from a settlement. So I think you have to debate whether you think it or not it's in a settlement. To me and the officer, it's very clear it's in the open countryside. So if it's in the open countryside, you then have to think about the policies that apply for the open countryside. And as I said earlier, technical advice note 6 is very clear around the policy approach. It has to be for rural enterprise dwelling, or it has to be for some. There is another exception, but that would have to be adjoining a settlement, which is affordable housing. I'm going to muddle it up and confuse you. It's neither at the moment. What it is, it's an open market dwelling proposed in the open countryside. So it's going completely against policy in that sense. So I'm struggling, and I'm being a professional lead now for planning. I'm struggling to equate that to an approval, okay, because it is contrary to policy. And that is the plan-led system that we're here to make decisions in line with policy. Okay, on the agricultural land, that's I think we saw on screen what's known as the agricultural land classification predictive. It is predictive, so that means it's not definitely known, but it seemed to be well within the land classification for grade 2, which is the best agricultural land. So to my mind, if members go against officer recommendation, what you're doing is going against our policies at national level, which are there to protect BMV, best most versatile agricultural land. Excuse the acronyms, you're gonna have to get used to me with acronyms. I'll try and do my best to explain. If I don't, you come back and ask me, you challenge us. So you'd be going against agricultural land classification and the national protection of agricultural land, but you'd also be going against development, the national policy around rural enterprise dwellings. There's no justification behind this dwelling. So I think that's where we are at the moment. I heard obviously Councillor Ian McIntosh, the phosphates issue. That is an issue that we're going to come and encounter through this committee time and time again. It is restricting development. Okay. NRW are in the process, just out of interest, may not be, it's not going to, I don't think it's going to change anything. They're in the process of updating their planning guidance at the moment. I'm hoping we might see a new refreshed version come the end of the month, but it would still apply to anything that generates waste. And this would have wastewater, although in this instance it sounds like there's a solution. I'm assuming it can drain to ground, so there would be a solution, so it's not impacting on the River Wye special area for conservation. But I'm just going to pause there if I may, but okay. I think you've got to think of how this fits with the plan as in your terms of deciding it. Okay, it's plan-led system.
Can I ask a question, just nip in just before I come back to Councillor Elwyn? There is part of our policy to look at land classification below grade 2. If there is none available, then under exceptional circumstances, you can build on it. Is there any land in and around that plot that could be used?
Yeah, in terms of that, there's insufficient information has been provided to show that any other alternatives have been explored.
Right, so,
yeah, there is another way, because it's predictive. What you could do is soil sampling and then come to us with the evidence that actually proves beyond any doubt that it isn't grade 2. Okay. So if the applicant disagreed with the designation, that's why it's predictive.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Councillor Elwyn, if you want to come back, that is.
Well, that raises an important point, I think, and that is, yeah, I would suggest if there's doubt at all about that classification, that would be an argument for deferral, to be honest with you.
I certainly wouldn't, obviously that's your decision. Our recommendation, I think, is still strongly that it's a refusal because it's contrary to policy around an unjustified open market dwelling in the open countryside.
Yeah, the two things, I'll park that with you, Chair. If that's the case in terms of land classification and proof, it would make sense to test the soil. And therefore, that would be an argument for deferral to get a proof either way or the other.
Yes.
And the other thing is whether it could be a rural enterprise dwelling. Those are the two issues, I think. Yeah.
Okay, diolch. Councillor Adrian Jones, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I think you've actually covered it with the land classification, but I would just point out, because the soil type might be good, because it's an orchard, there is limited agricultural use. I'm speaking as a farmer. I know, you can't just take an orchard down. It's predominantly grazing and poorer type of grazing because of the trees. So I would question the grading of the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adrian. Councillor Hugh Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I thank the officer for his presentation and the speaker as well. I think it's clear cut, to be honest with you. I mean, we would have to have very good reasons to go against it, and I've not heard anything so far. I mean, even if the grass classification, it is an unjustified development in the open countryside. And I will listen to the debate, but I am willing to recommend that we accept the officer's recommendation. I do believe it's clear cut. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hugh Williams. Councillor Gwynfor Thomas, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's so very, very difficult because so many of us sitting here will empathise with a young couple, regeneration. It's what we as councillors are enthusiastic about, and it's real. So I'm just hearing the young man speak, so passionate, developed a great business, and the amount of employees, and we as councillors, in my opinion, have little choice but to support the officer's recommendation, despite what we've heard. And it really hurts me to say that, because it's what we as councillors want to be enthusiastic about. But sadly, I have to put myself in a position to second Councillor Hughes' recommendation. But if there's some way around it in the future, if that's a rural enterprise plot or something like that, certainly be more than happy to look at that and to support this young couple in their future business.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Gwynfor Thomas. Next to speak is Councillor Jeff Morgan, please.
Hello, yeah. This is a subject very close to my heart because I found myself in this position 35 years ago when you had to buy 70 acres, I think it was then, to get a dwelling. I bought 28, worked day and night and couldn't get there. And I know the rules are the rules and the guy's done his job perfectly well, but I think we need to aim at a policy change. And the only way to do that is to try, I'll be voting to put this through. And as far as grade 2 land, they're planting trees all over it. And I know it's outside of the boundary, but not by a lot. And there is other buildings around, and like you said, other houses are the same. So I'll be backing it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ian McIntosh, please. I'll go back to you.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Elwyn suggested that we should defer that. I think he was moving towards that direction so that we can ascertain the land quality. I'd just like to second that. So it's going to put a spanner in the works, I'm afraid.
Okay, just clarify.
Second deferral.
Just clarify. And Councillor Elwyn, did you actually propose a deferment?
I'm happy to do that to get the proof in terms of the soil. I accept also it doesn't necessarily answer the other question in terms of the it being open market house as opposed to a rural enterprise dwelling. So we might well be back in the same place in a couple of months' time. That's the only fear I have.
Yeah, if I'm just saying if it were to be refused according to the officer recommendation, Clearly, there's a refusal reason there that can be challenged. There'd be two refusal reasons that would be challengeable there. And what I would be recommending to the applicant, one is, yeah, go and do that soil sampling, test the soil. Let's find out what grade it actually is. So that would deal with the one. And then the second one is I would be probably advocating looking at the rural enterprise dwelling option and seeing if that route would actually get the dwelling that they're seeking. Luke's indicated already that he doesn't think that's possible on the evidence that he's got in front of him at the moment, but I don't know whether they've exhausted that between them. So I would be, there is another way of dealing with it if it is refused. So I'm just making that, and I say a big if at the start of all that.
Can I just come in, Chair? I did speak to the applicant on site and I explained our position. I said that we would be willing to engage and, you know, see if there is an opportunity for a rural enterprise on the site. But that would obviously have to be submitted under a new application because this is obviously being dealt with as an open market dwelling.
Thank you. Councillor Gordon, Councillor Ian, are those on hands?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, I'll take the amendment first.
Chair, can somebody turn the microphone on, please?
Sorry about that, Councillor Hugh, my microphone got turned off. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
My light not working.
No, it's not coming up on my screen.
I need to move again, don't I?
Sorry.
Thank you. Actually, my questions have been answered in terms of would it have made a difference if it was a local, a rural enterprise dwelling, and again about the soil testing. But the other comment I had is the applicant told us that he was hoping there would be a picture here that showed us other dwellings in that area, and we haven't seen that. I would have liked to have seen that because the report leads us to think that there are no other dwellings close to this, but the applicant leads us to think that there are.
I'll bring Peter in. Oh,
I don't know, Luke, you've got that overhead satellite image, whether that does the job. I know the area well. I know the applicants referred to some other dwellings up the road. I think it was the Clyde Price business, and there's another dwelling up there back towards Llanaigan to the south on the map there. I haven't checked the history, I don't know whether you've done so, Luke, but again, dwellings in my mind that are in open countryside, so dwellings that would have to be justified. And the only way to justify those is the rural enterprise dwelling route. So if the committee was to grant this, we're basically granting, as a committee, you would be an unencumbered dwelling. That dwelling could be sold on to anybody as well. There's no restrictions on its occupancy. So I don't really want to repeat what I've said already. I think we're without the justification for that dwelling at the moment. Okay.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back to make sure I'm really clear? So I'd understood that this wasn't the most up-to-date picture, but you're saying this square here, all the dwellings that are in that area are on this picture?
No, a satellite, I'll be common sense, it might seem like being pedantic, a satellite image will always be out of date because something that happened yesterday won't be on there. So there will be other dwellings, and I'm going to accept what the applicant told you when he spoke, that there are other things showing there. It's the best image we probably got. It's probably Google Earth, isn't it?
Yeah, there's, just to add to that, it doesn't make it acceptable if there is other dwellings along that highway. It's obviously contrary to policy, as we've stated. This is not being dealt with as a rural enterprise, it's being dealt with as an open market dwelling in the open countryside.
Going for, if the committee was minded to go for deferment, that would be along the side of looking at the soil samples and with that additional information, bringing it back to committee. And as Councillor Elwyn Vaughan has indicated, we could find ourselves in the same position we are now. So just be minded, I'm going to bring that forward now as the amendment. So it's been proposed and seconded to go for deferment. Those members wishing to go along with that, please indicate now. Those against? Abstentions? Councillor Hugh online.
I'm against deferment.
That amendment falls. And we bring it back to the original, which is officer's recommendation. If there's no other speakers, I'll put that. Well, we haven't got a proposer or a seconder yet for that. Oh, yes, we have, sorry. We have got a proposer and a seconder. Do apologize, just checking for speakers. There are none. Nope. Okay, it has been proposed and duly seconded to go along with officer's recommendation, which is one of refusal. Those members wishing to go along with that, please indicate now. Those against? Abstentions? Councillor Hugh?
Yeah, I'm for the officer's recommendation of refusal.
Okay, that meets with officer's recommendation. Thank you. On to our final application of the day. Oh, sorry, yes.
Chair, can I just come in now and say,
Okay, we're restarting the meeting, just adjusted the screens. I'm going to Councillor Gareth D. Jones, Vice Chair, please.
thank you, Chair. I just wanted to highlight that I think this is evidence more than anything how the current LDP is letting down a lot of our residents within Powys. Every one of us councillors here today would want to have supported that last application. It was well justified with his business with everything local people. So when the LDP review is being looked at now, can we please make sure, I've had a number of applications in my own ward where we've not been able to do this. Our youngsters having to move out, their houses aren't out there. So we've got to look at this. And if we do go down the lines of a rural enterprise with this couple, I'm sure the floor space would be significantly reduced. These young couples grow, they want to build a life home, and it's something we as councillors need to be looking at to accommodate these and look after our own. So if that could be noted from this committee, if everyone is in agreement, I'd be grateful.
I'm certainly, I echo what you're saying, Vice Chair, and I'm sure Carol, our clerk, will make note of that. And if we could write a letter to the portfolio holder for planning and rights of way, that would be really good from the whole of the committee, I believe. Yeah, everyone's in favour of that. Great.
Well,
okay, thank you. On to our final application today, which is 21/2249/HH. A householder erection of residential steel frame to replace existing garage, creation of a new driveway and drop curb. This is part retrospective. This is in High Meadow, 3 Churchill Drive, Newtown. Taking us through this application is Luke Jones. But before we start the application, we'll just check that Mr. Mike Hughes, the objector, is with us on Zoom. Mr. Mike Hughes, are you with us? You might need to unmute, Mr. Hughes. Is he showing in the meeting? Right. Mr. Mike Hughes.
Yes, good. Sorry.
Hello, my name is County Councillor Carl Lewis. I'm the chairman of this committee, and just checking that you're in attendance.
Yes, I am.
Brilliant. Okay, we're going to start the application. We're going over now to Luke Wisdom to take us through the application. I'll bring you in momentarily as one of the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. So this application 21/2249/HH is for erection of a residential garage, replacing the existing one, and also creation of a new driveway and drop curb. It's part retrospective in terms of the driveway has been already stoned. It hasn't been finished yet, and the garage was partially constructed. Just to note, really, members, this application was in committee in April and it was deferred due to the election in the ward. So obviously it was called in by former councillor Dan Rowlands. An aerial image shows that the site is within the town council area of Newtown. It is located in a residential area bordered by residential properties on either side and to the south. The proposal is for a garage 6.35 metres in length and width, 3.6 metres in overall height and 2.85 metres to the eaves. The garage is to be used for storing the applicant's cars. I pass back to the chair now for speakers.
Thank you very much, Luke. First of our speakers, as I've indicated, is Mr. Mike Hughes. Mr. Mike Hughes, you have 5 minutes and you may begin when you're ready.
Right, thank you very much. My objection to the planning application before you this morning is not to stop the applicant from erecting a larger garage. I have no problem with that at all, but it is against the size of the building, the type of materials being used for the construction, and that the building does not comply with the LDP policy DM13 and the principle of development LDP policy H7. My objection to the proposed size of the building is that it is not in keeping with all the other garages on the adjacent and surrounding properties. These are all single-storey residential garages with a mono-pitch and constructed of traditional materials. This is an industrial building in all but name, being applied for as a residential garage. This is not a residential garage. Materials being used are again not in keeping with the construction of a residential garage on a large residential estate. They are materials used for the construction of a building on an industrial estate. The building should be constructed with traditional materials to give it some chance of blending in with the buildings in the surrounding properties. I have travelled around many other residential estates in Newton and have not seen a building of this size and material type erected at any other property. This proposed building is typically located on small holdings and rural properties, not on an urban residential estate. Why does this building have to have such a high roof? If this was a mono pitch, the roof height could be immediately reduced to 2.6 metres at the front to 2.2 metres at the rear, which would be more in keeping with the other nearby properties, and then clad externally with timber boarding. LDP policy H7 requires the additional development to be subservient to the main dwelling. This building is not subservient to the main building, which is 79 square metres with a ridge height of 4.2 metres and eaves height of 2.4 metres. The proposed building is 40.3 square metres with a ridge height of 3.6 metres and 2.8 metres eaves height, and rises enormously over the neighbouring boundaries and can be seen from many parts of the estate. LDP policy DM13 requires the development is designed to enhance the character of the surrounding area in terms of site-in appearance, integration, scale height, massing and design detailing, and that it contributes towards the preservation of local distinctiveness and sense of place. This building in no way does that contain any of these requirements for the development. In fact, it detracts hugely from the character of the surrounding area. Also, why is this building not replacing the existing garage, which is still being used, instead of removing a valuable residential garden with flowers, bushes and shrubs and replaced with an already laid additional driveway without planning permission? The application states that the existing garage is no longer usable. Why is it not being removed and replaced with this proposed development? I thought we were trying to increase our green space and improve our green spaces and wildlife habitat, not destroying them. An application like this on paper does not give the true picture of how this development will impact the surrounding properties. So may I finally ask that you defer your decision and visit the site to understand why I and many other residents are incensed by this unsightly development. And although the steel frame which had been erected has now been removed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mike Hughes. On to our next speaker, which is Mrs. Anne Chapel-Gill. I think that you're in the chamber. Please come forward. Mrs. Anne Chapel-Gill is the applicant's mother. Mrs. Anne Chapel-Gill. You have 5 minutes and you may begin when you're ready.
Hello, everyone. I'm here to represent my son Carl. He is still unwell as this whole situation is having a big impact on him at the moment, prolonging his recovery. I would like you to consider granting planning permission for the erection of a new fully insulated, non-combustible steel frame double garage at 3 Churchill Drive, SY16 2LE. It will be replacing a very old, falling down beyond repair asbestos garage, if I can repeat, asbestos garage, which is known as a hazardous building material, which needs to be removed so the family can spend time in the garden with no worries. The reason why the garage is being put the other side of the property is because my son would like to extend the kitchen in time, so the family have room to eat at a table rather than just in the living room at the moment. So the extension would be using part of the existing driveway, and all the drainage is that side of the property, which makes sense to extend that side. The new double garage will be for my son's 2 classic cars, which are my son's hobby, and also for residential use, to include storage of push bikes for the family, garden equipment and tools for my son's hobby and maintenance to the property, and will be all kept in one place together. In the beginning, the garage was going to be erected under permitted development guidelines, but when framework was started to be put up, we then realised that the garage was too high at the eaves, but the overall height was well within permitted development guidelines, being approximately 400 millimetres lower than allowed. So it was only the eaves height that were an issue at the time. Being approximately 300 millimetres too high, but overall height well within height allowed. So at that point, work was stopped immediately. We then started the process of putting in for retrospective planning permission, not thinking it would take this long. The garage would have been erected by now if the eaves height had been correct for permitted development, and we would not have needed to go through this process, cost and stress. The garage will look much better than some containers or lorry bodies, I'm sure. Hopefully you will take note of this and grant permission. Kind regards, Anne Chapel-Gill, Carl's mother.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Anne Chapel-Gill. That concludes our speakers. I'll hand back now to Luke Woosnam to take us to his recommendation.
Thank you very much, Chair. LDP policy H7 encourages additional residential development to be provided as extensions to existing dwellings, and where it is not possible, it requires the buildings to be grouped with and subordinate to the main dwelling. Also, policy DM13 states that the proposals will be acceptable only where they complement or enhance the character of the existing building in terms of height, proportion, scale, roof pitches, gable, features, materials, fenestration, whilst avoiding any unacceptable loss of parking, adverse impact upon neighbours' properties. So the proposed garage is to measure 6.35 metres in length and width, overall height 3.6 metres, height to the eaves of 2.85. The proposal does not take up more than half the garden area and is considered to be acceptable in terms of the size and the scale, remaining subservient to the main dwelling. The garage is to be sited in the rear garden of the property on the southwestern side and will be approximately 1 metre away from both the side and the rear boundary. The proposed garage is considered to be modest height and is not considered to be overbearing on neighbouring properties. The proposed materials are composite insulated steel sheeting panels in anthracite grey colour for both the walls and the roofing. The proposed materials are not normally associated with residential garages, which are commonly built using brick or timber. However, it is not considered that proposed materials will affect the character of the area and are considered acceptable by officers as an alternative. The The proposed garage is to be used for the storage of the applicant's cars. Concerns have been raised in relation to the use of the garage, which will be restricted via a planning condition. The condition will restrict the use of the garage solely for the purposes incidental to the enjoyment of the dwelling at 3 Churchill Drive, and should not be used for any other purpose whatsoever, including independent or commercial use. In terms of highways, specific reference is made to policy T1. The application as amended includes the creation of a driveway, as you can see there, and drop curb to the western side of the property. Highways have been consulted on the proposal and have raised no objection, subject to a number of conditions being included on any grant of consent in relation to the gradient and visibility from that access. As such, it's considered to be acceptable with T1. In terms of residential amenity, consideration has to be given to DM13 along with the Paris Residential Design Guide. The application site is bordered by residential properties to the west, south and east. The proposed garage does not include any windows, so it's not considered that there'll be a loss of privacy would be a factor on this occasion. It's considered that the garage will somewhat be screened on all 3 sides by existing fence, hedgerow and garages on either property to the side. It is not considered that the building would adversely affect these properties in relation to loss of light or overshadowing. It is noted that the garage reaches a height of approximately 3.6 metres to the ridge, which is not considered to be over dominant and overbearing within this location. It is also considered that the position of the building being at least 1 metre away from the boundary will not impact any neighbouring property in terms of loss of light, privacy and overbearing. Just to confirm that Paris Environmental Protection have been consulted on the proposal in relation to noise and confirm that because it's a residential garage, and a restriction will be placed on any consent, that they do not object. In terms of the existing garage that is to be demolished, photos have been provided which shows the poor state of repair really of that garage. It shows that there is no potential for any protected species, and as such, no ecological survey has been requested on this occasion. No biodiversity enhancements have been proposed at this time. However, a condition will be placed on any grant of consent, and that will be needed to be provided prior to any works commencing. Right, okay. In terms of public representations, the LPA have received 8 letters of objection from neighbours. The objections relate to the use of the garage, which has been covered, and also a condition will be placed on any grant of consent. Also, further comments relate to the creation of driveway, and the application has been amended to include that within this application, and highways are happy. Other comments such as the materials, yes, they are grey and sort of more of a agricultural style, insulated. They're insulated because if there is potentially a fire, it won't spread to any of the other properties. The height of the garage is not considered to be too high. It's just higher than the eaves of the existing bungalow. So that is not considered to be a major factor. And if it had been slightly lower, it would have come under permitted development. Right, okay. It is noted that Newtown Town Council have raised an objection to this. Further comments have been asked from the Town Council because they object based on the Newtown Place plan. Unfortunately, Newtown Town Council cannot provide any further comments. It is recommended for one of approval. I'll just show you a couple of slides really. This is the existing driveway at the site, showing a parking area there on the left, and further on there is an area for dogs. Next photo shows the new driveway which is there. It is not finished, it's supposed to be finished with tarmac, and also then the curb is to be dropped there. This photo shows the residential garage for the neighbouring property number 2 here, and the garage is to be erected here. It has been taken down. And obviously then this is an image from the rear showing the properties that way. It is as well confirmed that a fence is to be erected here, so it will be screened from those properties there. But as you can see, there is screening here, there is a hedge, and at the back as well, there is a fence there, so it will be somewhat screened on those elevations. That is the garage, as you can see there, in a poor state of repair, and that is to be demolished as soon as approval. It is recommended to members to approve this application with 12 planning conditions. I pass back to the chair for any questions.
Thank you very much, Luke. Over to members now for discussion. I'll just check. First to indicate they'd like to speak on this application is Councillor Ian McIntosh, please.
Thank you, Chair. After listening to the objector, I had some concerns, but I think most of those have been addressed now with what we've heard from Luke just now. You've referred a lot to LDP policy DM13, which is to do with the appearance, height, mass, and so on of the building. But there's one part where it says that developments need to contribute towards the preservation of local distinctiveness and sense of place. Now, after listening to the speaker, he seems to think that that's not necessarily going to be the case with this. So I just, after some further reassurance, really, that what's going to end up there is in keeping with all the other buildings in the surrounding area.
Yes, I mean, you know, we accept that the garages predominantly on this estate are brick. We don't consider that the materials proposed significantly adverse the character of the area. Like I said, really, it will be screened on all three sides, if not the four, once the fence is put up. Yes, it will partially be seen, but will that adversely affect the area? We don't consider that.
Okay, thank you, Luke. On that basis, I'm happy to move. We go off with officer's recommendations, then, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Ian McIntosh. Do I have anyone else who wants to speak? Councillor Hugh Williams, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The photograph that's on screen here, it does show a wooden shed in front of the old garage, and the application is for a new garage and the removal of the old one. Shouldn't it be conditioned, because even the speaker mentioned this was an asbestos building, now you need a license to remove it. Shouldn't that be conditioned in that instance, you know, if it is to be removed? And is the shed considered the sort of a non-permanent, really, and not relevant to the discussion? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hugh. Councillor Peter.
Yeah, I don't think it. Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Hugh Williams. I'm just double checking. Has the shed been removed? No, it hasn't. Okay, I think clearly the property still has permitted development rights anyway, so I'm not seeing the need to remove it. In terms of the fact that it's asbestos, that has to be removed in accordance with any I've never done it myself, but there'll be waste rules, licensing rules around removal. So they're going to have to comply with that anyway. So from a planning perspective, I'm not seeing the need at all to condition the removal of the existing.
Would you like to?
But isn't the application for, it does say replace an existing garage?
Wow.
Yeah, to me, that's an interesting comment. If the development is replacement of, then we're actually going to lose it in the description. We were expecting the garage to be replaced, so it has to happen.
Yes.
Yeah, according to the description of development. Yeah, just looking for checks from contrary comments from my officers. I believe that's the case. Yeah.
So it would be removed then?
There are no conditions.
Can you confirm that, Luke?
Yeah.
There'd be nothing to say it has to.
Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. Contrary view from my officers. Okay. Interesting, isn't it? You want to have a go, Gemma?
Yep.
I think it's probably down to members that if you consider in accumulation that those two buildings together is causing harm, then yes, obviously we could put a condition on. Now, as officers, I think reading Luke's report, he doesn't consider that in accumulation, those two garages together would cause harm to the area. So that's the only way I would say, or reason why we could justify putting a condition on to ask for that is to be removed in a certain time frame. And I would say to members that obviously if they do remove it, they still do have permitted development rights, so they could put other structures up under those permitted development rights in that area. So I just do question perhaps whether any such condition would meet the tests in terms of being reasonable and necessary. Hope that helps.
Councillor Hugh, do you want to come back?
Yeah, it just leaves me in a quandary really, because it's been mentioned that it's in a poor state, and I'm looking at the photograph and my own personal view. I mean, it's not the most attractive building, but that's very personal. Doesn't got no bearing on planning, and it just leaves me in a bit of a quandary. But I've heard what the officers have said, but the application is for the replacement. I don't know what to say. I listen to what other people say, Chair.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hugh. I'll go back to Councillor Ian McIntosh because he did signal before Councillor Gwynfor came in. So.
Yeah, just on this subject.
Chair, I can't hear a thing.
Sorry, yeah, sorry. I'll start again. Sorry, I didn't remember. I just wanted. I don't think that was me. I just wanted to come back on this issue. Okay. I just wanted to come back on this issue.
Okay, back onto the meeting. I'm going back now to Councillor Ian McIntosh.
Thank you. We'll try this. It does seem to be coming. Do you want me to keep going? Yeah, okay. Anyway, briefly, I just wanted to come back on this issue. Proposal says to replace an existing garage.
Thank you, Carol. Resuming the meeting, going back to Councillor Ian McIntosh, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd almost forgotten what I wanted to say now. Basically, on the proposal, it does say, and this is going back to what's just been discussed really, that the garage is to replace an existing garage, and it's open to interpretation a little bit. I wouldn't necessarily agree that it does mean that you have to knock the old one down. All this is replacing the old garage with a new one to take over the use of the old garage. So I know it's a bit of a grey area, but I wouldn't necessarily agree that that does mean that you have to therefore knock the old one down. So I just wanted to chuck that one in there as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Ian McIntosh. Councillor Howland-Hume, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Do we know why he wants the garage to be of this height? Why does it have to be so high in relation to possibly what's there now?
I think that was just the standard size when they bought the garage. It was just slightly too high to meet permitted development.
Right.
Obviously, if it had just been a bit lower, this wouldn't be in front of us today.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Howland-Hume. I have a proposer to go along with officer's recommendation. I've got two old hands, two legacy hands in, Councillor Ian McIntosh and Councillor Howland-Hume. Do I have a seconder or someone? Councillor Ellen Vaughan, thank you very much. It has been proposed and duly seconded to go along with officer's recommendation, which is one of conditional consent. Those members wishing to go along with officer's recommendation, please indicate now. Those against? Abstentions? One. Councillor Hugh Williams, please.
I'll go for, Chair.
Thank you very much. That meets with officer's recommendation. Thank you. That concludes the planning aspect of this meeting today. Moving on to the next part of the agenda, which is the delegated list. Is there any observations in there? If there isn't any observations from members, could I have a proposer and a seconder to accept them? Thank you, Councillor Owen. Thank you very much, Councillor Gareth D. Jones, Vice Chair. Moving on now to the rights of way. I believe we have Sean Barnes with us today. Thank you very much, Simon, for coming today. Thank you. Right, the members, this is to put someone forward, appointment for the local access forum. You'll see slips in front of you. You write your nomination on that, and Carol will come around and collect them momentarily. Before we do that, I want to introduce Sean Barnes. Sean, I've asked everyone today to introduce themselves and give a brief description of what your role is within Powys County Council, because we have a lot of new members here today.
Thank you, Chair.
You know your part, right? We might need to pause a second.
Could we pause the meeting, please, Carol? Thank you. Okay, we're resuming the meeting and just introducing now Sean Barnes. Sean, I've asked members of the committee, not members of the committee, officers of the committee to introduce themselves today and what your role is within Powys County Council. So over to you, Sean.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. I'm Sean Barnes, Professional Lead for Countryside Access and Recreation. So my team's work covers quite a wide variety of work areas: public rights of way, including 2 national trails, common land, of which we have 40% of the common land in Wales, parks and open spaces, and biodiversity. So it's quite a broad remit. The decisions that will come before this committee primarily relate to public rights of way and common land, and we do have some more information due fairly shortly. The subject of today's report is about appointing a member to the Local Access Forum. So just to give a little bit of background as to what the Local Access Forum is, it is a statutory advisory body to the council. So it's not a decision-making group, it's an advisory body that was set up under the Countryside and Rights of Way Act 2000 and provides advice to the council on countryside access matters. Now, there is quite a distinction in terms of what officers do, what this committee does, and in terms of what the forum does. The forum generally is not involved in day-to-day rights of way casework, partly because of GDPR constraints, and partly because, in fact, that is set out in statute how we deal with that casework. The role of the Local Access Forum tends to be around matters, strategic matters, such as the Rights of Way Improvement Plan, which is a very big piece of work. We've fairly recently adopted a new Rights of Way Improvement Plan, and it sets out our approach to use of resources. So it's those kinds of matters that the Local Access Forum provides advice on. However, as I mentioned earlier, they're not a decision-making body. It is advice, I say advice only, although it can be very powerful and very helpful advice. The Local Access Forum is appointed for 3 years at a time. The membership is made up of individuals with a very wide variety of perspectives on countryside access, but it must include representatives of users of local rights of way and of landowners and occupiers, together with other interests that may be relevant to the authority's area. So we advertise, and we're due in the not too distant future to advertise again for membership. Volunteers kindly put their names forward. They let us know what their interest in countryside access matters is, and then we appoint to the forum. When our user group representatives do choose to come forward, they are not there as a representative of their organisation. They're not there as a member of, say, the Ramblers Association. They are there as an individual with interest and expertise in countryside access and a useful perspective to give us. There is a memorandum of understanding between the council and the forum, which sets out how the relationship works. what does the forum expect of the council, and what can the forum, what does the council expect of the forum? Because it is an advisory body. So what is it reasonable to expect in both directions? The forum in Powys currently meets quarterly. During COVID-19, that has been via Teams, but it can also include in-person meetings and occasionally site visits where that would assist with the discussion. There is a council representative on the forum, and the council representative is a member of the Planning, Taxi Licensing and Rights of Way Committee. Following the local government elections in May, we do need to appoint a new council representative to the forum. It's probably also worth explaining, though, that the forum is also attended, as you would expect, by officers of Countryside Services, who are either talking to the forum about matters where they have sought information about countryside access, or actively seeking advice from the forum on countryside access matters. That's, I think that's the content of the report. Chair, would you like me to stop it for any questions at that point?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. Members, do you have any questions for Sean, please? Maybe some of the newer members want some clarification or anything? Don't be shy. There's your time. No?
Thank you, Chair. So the recommendation is a fairly simple one, that the Planning, Taxi Licensing and Rights of Way Committee appoints a council representative to the Powys Local Access Forum.
Okay, over to you, members. You have your slips, or if you want to nominate yourself right here, right now, happy to take it from the floor. So either way, whichever way you want to play it. If there's someone that's burning to do it, or you have someone you in mind that you want to nominate, up to you. Put it on a piece of paper, and Carol will come around now. We'll give you 2 minutes to do that. Okay. Happy for me to continue, Carol? Do you want to write them down first?
No, not me.
Apologies, but that's the second time it's unmuted now.
I don't know why it does it. Gremlins. Thank you anyway. Okay, we've got one nomination for Councillor Karina, one nomination for Councillor Gareth E. Jones, one nomination for Councillor Hywyn Hume, and one nomination for Gareth Pugh. We'll go round again, members. So you got, yeah, which one? Yeah, so go round again now. So you pick from one of the 4 you want, write it on a slip of paper, and that will be collected by Carol.
Yeah, would you be able to repeat the names, please?
Yeah, before we do that, can I confirm that the 4 councillors mentioned are happy to stand?
No, that's why I withdraw, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Councillor Howard, so everyone else happy to stand? Yes, great. Okay, so just a reminder, it's Councillor Karina, Councillor Gareth E. Jones, and Councillor Gareth Pugh you'll be voting for. Thank you.
Can I send my vote to Carol by email, Chair?
Of course you can, Councillor Hugh.
Check.
Check with you. Okay. We have a clear winner, Councillor Gareth E. Jones, who are the nomination. You happy to accept the role?
Yes, Chair.
Brilliant. Okay. Congratulations. That concludes our meeting for today. So could we have the date for the next meeting, please, Gareth? Sorry to push you. Second of July.
7th of July.
7th of July, members. So depending if we got speakers or not will determine whether we're online or in the chamber. So if we've got speakers, we'll be here. Because I think it's only fair and proper that we give that chance for speakers to speak to us face to face. So thank you, officers who presented today. Thank you. Thank you, members. So I close the meeting.